Anybody see me? I don't see me yet. We'll figure this out. Hold on. Get some light first. Nope, that's dead. Okay, no light for me. Okay, well, I'm seeing my video, but let me make sure I'm seeing where the group is. As soon as we got people watching. Oh, cool. The Facebook group is not working. Okay, hold on. Hold on. We'll fix this. Permissions error. Okay. Thanks for that. Authorization. Of course, you'd have to reauthorize, right? Why would that be set up? Yes, I know. Come on. I think I just did this. Okay, I'm ready. Go live. Come on. Says I'm live. So got somebody watching on YouTube, someone watching over on the Facebook page. Sorry, folks. I'll tell you all about it in just a second. I just want to make sure I'm working. First and foremost. Hey, we're live. Okay, I see myself. Y'all see me? Why is my... There it is. Okay. Cool. Wow, that was a whole thing. So, most of you all know my debacle, my ongoing battle with my computer that 60% of the time works all the time. It's frustrating because it's not on its last leg. It works fine for almost everything except doing, let me turn this light on. There we go. A little bit better. Now you can see me. Except for, doing a live stream like this because it's got a power issue, basically. Power module is failing. And so I can only use the ports, the USB-C ports on one side of the machine, which is weird. The other side just doesn't work at all now. So really frustrating. It's probably because it lived in Hawaii for a while, where it is nice and humid and likes to eat computers. But I don't want to get rid of it because it's still a powerhouse machine, Oh, hey, Sneha was the creeper on YouTube. Yeah, sorry, I had an issue. I had to reauthorize BookCareerInAYear group. Everything else was working fine, so that's what took forever. But I got down here at 9:30 my time, and what was I saying? Oh, yeah, so we have a Mac Mini that I also bought in Hawaii, but that one works fine. It's the new M1. It's super fast and all that. I get down here at 9:30 so I could get everything set up on the Mac Mini so I could live stream my places. Didn't work. I couldn't even open it. So I reinstall it. Doesn't work. I try the Intel version. It doesn't work. And then I start Googling, I'm like, well, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole right now. And people are like, yeah, it turns out OBS just doesn't work on the Intel right now, which is mind-boggling, but whatever. So then I'm like, all right, well, then I have no choice. Let me see if I can get, an RMTP stream app for my phone. So I tried that, and of course it would never connect to the credentials I gave it. So I'm like, okay, fine. Now it's like 9:56, and I'm like, gee, this is ridiculous. So I get my crappy computer out that I'm on now that works, half the time. Plugged it in, and it worked fine. It worked great. I just had to reauthorize that group. So if we're getting an issue with the microphone, as we have in the past, just let me know. Just call out. But wait a few more minutes here since I was a little bit late to the party. I know there might be some people that jumped out because they thought I wasn't doing this. So we'll wait for some more eyeballs in the show. But yeah, man, it's great to be back. You guys, it's been like a month, I think. It's been a while from me doing these live streams. I apologize. We've had some emergency ski trips to go on. We've had an emergency have to go buy a puppy, and then an emergency play with the puppy week. A lot of emergencies, a lot of family emergencies. But yeah, hey, all good. We got a snow day today. Got about a foot here, which is crazy because it'll be gone in like 3 days. But puppy loves the snow. Loves the snow. Super cool. So, hey, call out. Where are you from? Where are you at? I see Joan is here from Bakersfield, the CA. Love it. You'll notice my office is getting slowly more cluttered on the shelves, which I'm pretty sure is not what my wife wanted when those went in. But, hey, beggars can't be choosers. Yeah, I mean, it might be lightly attended today. There's Robin. Robin's in here. Welcome in. Puppies are definitely emergencies. She's been running us ragged. She's really chill, though, so it's been pretty easy in terms of, relatively speaking, in terms of puppies. She's Anatolian, Great Pyrenees, and Bernese Mountain Dog mix. And she loves being outside. She loves the snow. She's like nonstop snow kiddo. So it was like kind of the first snow we had. I guess the first time we got her, when we first got her, it snowed a little bit, and so she went out and was playing, but she didn't even really know us at that point. She's 4 months old, so this morning we got a foot overnight, and my wife just like opened the door, she took off and just like danced around our deck and did flips and all kinds of fun stuff. Yeah, good deal. Well, welcome in. It might be a little bit lightly attended. That's okay. I haven't been doing this, so we're going to have to kind of ramp everybody back up. But that being said, I do have some dates that I won't be doing this. Let's see. Next week and the week after, I'm going to be in Texas. So I don't know that we'll do a live stream. Certainly not the 21st next week because I'll be driving then. And the 28th, I might be able to jump on. We'll have to see. I will keep you posted. You know me. I will let you know 10 minutes before. Welcome in, Paul. Accidentally clicking on things to quit the video. Yeah, don't do that. Don't ever quit. Don't ever quit me, Paul. That's okay. I click all kinds of random shit and things blow up, as you may have heard me or not heard me say. We're going to talk about motivation today. It is a piece of the puzzle, right? That's kind of how I frame this. Is a motivation certainly something we need, certainly something that exists that we can take advantage of, that we can exploit for our own good. But it's a mere piece of the overall productivity puzzle. I don't think we've covered anything about motivation specifically because I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the idea of motivation. And we'll talk about why. But I think this will be good. I've got some notes here, so I'll be kind of looking over at those as we go. But just to frame this, you are a writer. First and foremost, that is your core activity. That is what you do. If you don't do that, then I don't know why you're here. But that's what we talk about here. And that's what we're going to frame all of this motivation stuff around, using motivation to write more books. So we can certainly use motivation for other things. How to be motivated to go on dates with your spouse. Hopefully you don't need too much motivation for that. But that's all stuff you can use motivation for. But we're not going to get into motivation in like a general sense. We're going to get very specific about writing. In using motivation for writing, because that is our core activity. What you do adjacent to all that, is let me say it this way. We are writers first and foremost. That is the core activity that we should be focused on every day. However, once you get into this a little bit more than just kind of the dabbler, the hobbyist who wants to write a book, maybe see how it goes, you will realize, especially today, there are so many other things, adjacent activities, even mostly unrelated activities that are all part of this thing called building a book career, which is what we talk about here in this group. And you will find, if you haven't already found, that motivation goes away very quickly when we're not doing things that are fun or enjoyable or bring us happiness or, or that we know are part of our long-term plans for world domination. Things like doing ads or running social media accounts, posting TikTok videos, editing, whatever it is that is not part of that core activity of writing the book the way that only you can, quickly becomes adjacent. And if we don't have motivation, we don't know how to produce motivation, we don't know how to find motivation, whatever term you want to use, whatever verb, to get that motivation in, you will find that you are either doing the core activity or just writing, which is great, but it's just writing. You're not doing any of the advertising, you're not doing any of the marketing, you're not doing any of the email stuff that you're supposed to be doing to build a career, remember? Or you're using that motivation for just the adjacent things. I've been in this cycle before too, right? Where I'm supposed to be writing, that's my core activity. Only I can do it the way I can do that. So I should be the one to do it, right? I can't outsource the writing part. But I'm addicted to doing all the other stuff. I'm addicted to doing ads. I'm addicted to running, TikTok account. I'm trying to figure that out. I'll go take a course on TikTok or whatever I want to learn. And then I realize at the end of a week or the end of a month, I'm like, man, I really haven't written enough. So when we talk about motivation, what I want to remind everyone is that there are really kind of two sides here, and both are equally important. We have to write, obviously. I would say that's probably more important, but still, if that's all we do, if we use the limited amount of motivation that we have in a given day, week, month, year for just that core activity, we aren't going to grow. Our career will not grow and expand and blow up as fast or as good as well as it would if we use motivation for some of these adjacent things. Okay, so I hope that's kind of a long-winded, as per the usual, a long-winded intro to this whole thing. But the idea of motivation for me is tricky because I believe when we set habits, and I think that's kind of the pinnacle of productivity is if we can habitualize or habitify. I don't know what the right verb is there for everything that we do in our life and our career. If we can work toward a good habit toward that thing, what we end up doing is we free up this limited well of motivation, right? But that takes discipline. That building that habit takes discipline. So on the road to building that habit, we use motivation. We use this temporary structure of brain cells that we get every morning that kind of resets every morning for most of us to build toward that habit. And then once we have that habit, that motivational well is freed up for something else we want to do. So, right? The habit is already there. The discipline is set. The habit has been formed. We can use that motivation to do something different. And that's what we want to do. We want to get to the point where we're building motivation in our day, or I should say we're using the motivation that we have to build toward a habit so that we can take back that motivation, that resource. We can reuse it somewhere else. Does that make sense? That is not scientific or psychological in any way, but that's the way I approach this. I have experience, and I've talked to a lot of people that have experienced this themselves, that motivation seems to be different in some sense than like habits or discipline, where those things on this side of the spectrum, we can kind of throw an unlimited amount at it. We can always be more disciplined. We can add more discipline. We can have more habits. If you've read Atomic Habits by James Clear, that's a fantastic book. But there's another one, I think, was it Charles Duhigg? There's another book on habit building, and it talks about the habit loop. The reward, the trigger, the cue, and the reward. I think are the three, or the trigger, the habit, and the reward. Basically, something happens. You walk into a room. Brendan Burchard does this. Every time he walks into a certain room, he says a certain phrase, in his head silently. But there's a trigger. There's something that we do. We see something. We think something. Good habits or bad habits, right? There's a trigger for it. We see the Oreo. We eat the Oreo. That's the reward. The reward is the habit itself, right? But if you break this down, your habit loop is your trigger. Something happens, and the habit itself takes place, and then the reward is what you get out of it, right? The dopamine hit, if it's something good or like that kind of thing. The point is, you can constantly be adding these habits to your day. You can be doing more and more things. You can have an unlimited amount of triggers, an unlimited amount of habit loops. And so discipline, in a sense, is the same thing, where you're just disciplining yourself to be habitual. You can have an unlimited amount, but motivation is not unlimited. That's the point I'm trying to get to, because we're talking about motivation, and we have a very finite amount of motivation that we're gifted every morning. We wake up and we're motivated to do something. We don't necessarily have the same amount of motivation from person to person. You may have more motivation than I do especially for specific tasks. If it's cleaning dishes, I'm really motivated to do that when I know I have a book project due, right? But the motivation I use for that is the same motivation that I would use to write my book. So I better use it for writing the book, because once it's gone, it's gone. Once I use it to do the dishes, now I have no motivation left for anything. Does this start to make sense? I know that I'm still kind of in the intro phase here, but we're going to talk about how to get the best use out of this motivation. If it's a finite resource, we got to use it wisely. So these are some things. Again, I'm going to be descriptive, not prescriptive. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to tell you what I do and the things that are that are helpful. Yeah, thanks, Neha. The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. That is the one I was thinking of. That's a great book, and it's been updated. James Clear actually references it in Atomic Habits a few times. But both of these are integral to discipline and how we build discipline in the form of habits. And there's not as much, at least in my reading, that I've seen on motivation, because I believe it's this thing that we're just gifted and we have a certain amount of it regardless of how we use it. And so the idea is some psychology guy or gal will write a book like Power of Habit or Atomic Habits, and they'll say, yeah, motivation. Use the motivation to build a habit and then free up that motivation well again and build another habit. But they don't really talk about what that motivation looks like and what it means. Okay, so that's what I want to dig into a little bit. Jumping in, first of all, this is going to be stuff that you've heard before, but it's worth repeating because it is really the best way that I've found to do this stuff. If we wake up in the morning, and I keep saying wake up in the morning. Now, I said most of us. Now, I think the vast majority of humanity, as our species, we wake up and we get motivated to do something in the morning. That doesn't mean we use the motivation in the morning, okay? That doesn't mean we're not motivated after lunch, or I get motivated at night to do things, but we have a well of motivation that is sort of reset after 8 hours of sleep. That's what I'm saying. And whether or not we spend it in the morning, that's a moot point. You can spend it however you want throughout the day, but once it's gone, it's gone. No more motivation. If you don't have habits built, you're basically going to go to bed, right? That's the end of your day. I hope this is making sense. So before we wake up in the morning, before you wake up tomorrow, for example, what you need to do is decide how you want to spend that motivation. And what that looks like is something called goal setting. It's nothing new here. And I'm not going to tell you how to set goals because I've already done that, or you know how to do it and you've read the books on SMART goals or whatever. But there is a way, there's a format for you that you prefer, a goal setting format, okay? But we need to set these clear, achievable goals. The theory of this here is that if we have a goal, we wake up in the morning, we have the second piece of that, which we need to get done, which is the motivation. We have the goal for it and the motivation. If I wake up and say, man, I've got motivation for either writing or doing dishes, if I don't have that goal of, hey, I know what I need to do. I need to achieve this specific thing, and it's called writing a book, then I'm going to go toward the dishes every time because it's easier. Check the box, right? I get the dopamine hit much faster than if I just spend an hour or two spinning wheels, writing a chapter that, I don't finish the book. So the point is, if we think about this stuff, the day before is usually the key. If I can sit down at the end of a day and go, what do I want to get done tomorrow? What do I want to do tomorrow? What's the thing I want to use my motivation for tomorrow? That's called setting a goal, and it's as simple as that. The key here, though, is not just setting a goal and saying, I hope, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to have the goal, and I'm going to have the motivation, and I'm going to do the goal. The key here is building toward the habit, right? Because the whole point of motivation, in my mind, is to use it to set a habit so that you can free up that motivation again 2 or 3 weeks down the road when the habit is set, and you can build a new habit, a new good thing into your life. So in this particular case, you're not just setting a goal that's achievable, SMART, whatever, measurable, all that stuff. You're doing it toward a habit. You're saying, I'm going to set a goal toward building the habit of writing every day in this example. And so the goal is specifically, and specificity matters when you goal set, of course, right? Specifically, I'm going to write from 11 to noon tomorrow because I want that to be my habit. I want to sit down, and that's the time during the day, most days, where I can spend writing this book without distraction, without interruption. We don't have to go pick up the kids from school or take them to the middle of the day. So I should be able to stick to this as a habit. That's what I'm going to do. That's the goal I'm going to set. Does that make sense? There's 3 pieces here, folks. It's you got a certain amount of motivation, but if you wake up that morning and decide how to spend it then, you miss the opportunity to work toward a goal, which is the second piece. But the third piece is that goal should be leading you toward a habit. That goal should be let's turn this motivation into discipline so that I can free up the motivation again, right? Limited well, finite resource. Second thing, establish a routine. This is sort of part of what I was talking about toward the end here. Habit formation theories suggest that establishing a consistent writing routine can reduce your effort to get started. All that to say is exactly what it's reiterating what I've already said, which is if you have a habit in place, you don't need as much motivation. The routine is easy. So that's what you're working toward. You're going to establish this routine. But you can back away from this a little bit. It's not just the routine of motivation, goal, building toward a habit. It's the routine of deciding how you're going to spend that motivation the night before. So that is part of your routine now. At some point during the day, you need to be thinking ahead, planning ahead. What am I going to do tomorrow? How am I going to get that done? Where am I going to be when I do that thing? And try to stick to it because that's going to establish that routine. And as much as if you're like me, you hate routine, like generally speaking, you don't want. I don't want to be locked down. I don't want to be tied down. I might want to go to the brewery. Build that into the routine. So if the routine for you is, man, I really need to write, but it doesn't matter if I write in my office or if I go to the brewery or the coffee shop or I write under my cubicle at work during lunch. As long as you're saying, hey, I'm going to allow the physical moving around to be part of my routine, then you're building toward that habit. It's working. You're doing it correctly. Does that make sense? Yeah. So just some study here, like I think it was Journal of Consumer Research. They did study and they found that, hey, if you do a task, if you repeat a task in a consistent context, that is what leads to the habit formation. So that's what we're talking about. It's not just, I'm going to write at some point tomorrow. That may lead to a habit, but it's going to take a lot longer because you're basically expanding your habit to be the entire day, what you do during an entire day. I hope this is making sense. What you need to do though is repeat the task in a consistent context. So if it is physical location, keep that the same. If you want that to be part of your routine. If you're like me and you don't want that to be part of the routine, then maybe the time when you do the particular task, build that habit. Is what you need to have. That's a consistent context for you, right? Maybe it's both. Maybe you need to be at the brewery at 11 a.m. every single day with one beer in hand, and that's when you're going to get your hour of writing done, no matter what, come hell or high water. You can start to see how, by being more specific about this, you're using a little bit of motivation to get you into that mode every day until all of a sudden you've repeated this task consistently in the same context enough times that a habit has formed. Discipline takes over. That's where your brain is like, no, I'm just wired to do this every day. I sit down every weekday, 11 a.m., got a beer, coffee, whatever, and I write for an hour, no distractions. Now you have motivation again. You've got that resource freed up so that you can go spend it on something different. Make sense? Cool. So we talked about a lot already. Probably pretty, repetitive for you guys, or reiterative, I guess. What's that right word? I can't remember the word. There's a word for it. Remunerative? No, I don't know. The point is, it's important because if we don't have this, we are losing the opportunity to expand and exploit our own, intellect in a sense, right? Like we're just relying on motivation to be there when we want it. This is, in writer world, this is the muse, right? We're waiting for the muse to strike. But you are all professional authors, and you understand that that's not how it works. The muse doesn't strike. You strike it. You say, hey, get over here. This is when we're writing. Muse, whatever you are. And eventually, discipline kicks in. It goes, okay, fine. Yeah, you're right. Let's get the job done, right? Let's move on a little bit. Let's change gears, shift gears a little bit to another important concept that I'm only beginning to really kind of, I wouldn't say discover, but to really sort of hack or really sort of bend to my will. And I think it would be useful for you too. And that's called flow. We haven't done a lot of science and research into what that is, or hadn't, I guess, prior to about 10 years ago. There's a few books written, I can't remember the names of, but there's some good ones out there on flow. But we didn't study this stuff because flow is such a squishy, just by name, by definition alone, it's this squishy, ethereal, like you can't really pin it down. What is it? It's even less specific than motivation or discipline, right? Or willpower. It's like this weird state that we try to get in, and we all know what it is and we can describe it, but we don't really know what it is and we can't really describe it, at the same time. We all know though that if we're in flow state, then that's the best writing we're going to get done. It's either going to be the quickest, the most efficient, the cleanest, whatever your barometer for good is. If we're in that flow state, the words come out easier than they do when we're not in that flow state. So what do we do as authors? we chase that flow state. We want to get into that state as quickly as possible, stay in it for as long as possible, and really actually get as much out of it as we can all day, every day. The problem? Well, it takes motivation to build a habit, to set a goal, to build a habit, to get us to the place where we're most often likely to be in that flow state. There's a lot of ifs in that statement, guys, right? There's a lot of like, well, you know, if this is in place, this variable works, blah, 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 then maybe I'll get into flow state. But since we don't really know what it is, we can't just take a pill and be in flow. As much as Joe Rogan wants you to take, you know, Alpha Brain or whatever the thing is. There is no pill. There's nothing there's no button you can press to immediately get into a state of flow. You have to design and structure your day around when you are most likely personally to be into this state. Okay. But what my point is, find that state, figure out what that is, because it is such a good state and it is so good for our motivation. The way I see flow, again, not scientific, you know, I'm not a scientist, don't play one on TV. I do write them in my books though, so I know a little bit about science, but the way I approach flow or sort of see it or picture it in my mind is like, it's like a midday rejuvenative state for our motivational well. So what that means is like when I'm in flow, when I'm writing and I'm like in this state of flow and things are going really well and I'm like, man, I'm feeling it. I find I get like a little motivational boost. It's like a dopamine hit just from being in that state. So when I'm done in that state, I don't feel exhausted. I don't come down off that and just go, I got to crash. I'm now motivated again. I'm like rejuvenated again. So it's almost like if I can catch that flow state by using motivation, like I can get, you know, motivated to go to the brewery, get my beer, 11 a.m. All the things are in place, and I write, man, when I come out of that flow state, I'm going to be motivated again to do the different thing, to do something else, right? So to go do the adjacent stuff. If the writing is the core activity, now I'm motivated to do the other stuff adjacent to the writing core activity, right? So I love chasing that flow state. It's sort of the goal of all of my motivational efforts. I put them toward building habits and goals, not just to build the disciplines, so I don't have to think about them anymore, but so that I can set myself up for success in that flow state. Okay. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. This, I don't know what it is. It's almost like if you study sleep, you know, you've got like REM sleep, you've got alpha, beta, like that different kind of phases of sleep. I feel like flow is like a phase of awakeness. So you getting into it is not always just a random, it's usually not a random thing, but it's not often something we can just turn on, right? Our subconscious, our brain controls all that stuff, right? So the point is, man, I forgot what I was going to say. It was super good. It's going to be amazing. Dang it. I'll think about it. Anyway, so flow state is really important for our motivation because I believe it's like getting in the fast lane. You know, we're motivated. We use that motivation to do the work that maybe we don't want to do, or even if we want to do it, it's not as easy. If we can get into a state of flow by analyzing our work, I remember what I was going to say. Okay, by analyzing our work, our structure, how we want to approach this, how we best work, and you know the environment, all that stuff, the consistent context we talk about from that study, then we're more apt to be in flow when we want to and need to be, and that is like putting us on the fast lane toward productivity. At the end of the day, we're like, man, I don't feel that tired. Like I feel I got a lot done. That's great. That's what we're chasing. Here's what I was going to say. Here's the way I have found my context, right? So when I say consistent context, that's, you know, how best do I work, how all this, that, and well, okay, let me shift gears. Sorry, I had some notes here that I was going to go through, and I don't know if we'll have time. One of the things you can do to enhance your flow state. Okay, this is what I really wanted to talk about. So, you know, you get into this. Let's say you've designed your morning routine so that you get into flow state at 8 a.m. and you're there for 2 hours. Great. When you're in that flow state, a lot of times what'll happen is something will distract you and you'll be out of that flow state, right? Something will get in the way and you'll be out of that flow state. Or you just put your head down and you type for 2 hours and pretty soon you're like, oh man, I don't feel good. That was too much. That was too fast. So what I like to do to I guess make the best of that state when I do get into it is a technique called Pomodoro. You've probably heard of this as well. It means tomato in Italian. But it's a technique. I can't remember the guy who created it, but it was a guy who just grabbed a tomato shaped, it was like an egg timer that he had on his counter and basically hacked his way to a technique that has been backed up by a lot of research now. And the concept is you build in very specifically timed mini breaks in one session. So a Pomodoro session for me is 25 minutes of work in that flow state, hopefully, and then 5 minutes of rest, of not working, of not doing anything. And you repeat that. For me, it's 4 times. And then after the fourth repetition of 30 minutes, that's 2 hours total, you take a 15-minute break. And then you start over. If you're going to do a second Pomodoro, you would start over. Now the times shift, and this is what I was going to say. You need to find that context for yourself. So if it's 7 minutes of work and 1 minute break, or it's probably a little short, but probably 15 to 20 minutes is the minimum that you would want to do in a work state, because you can really get in that flow state and stay there. And then take that break. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I like 5 minutes because it's hard to do that. It's a long time. But it really works. What I found is if you are honest with yourself and you don't lie to yourself and you cut off, the timer goes off, boom, you put the keyboard down. Doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a word. You sit there, you back away from the computer. Best you go outside and do something completely different. You go walk the dog, whatever, 5 minutes. Minimum, you would just back away from the computer. You stop looking at any screens, no phone. You just take a break. It's excruciatingly long time if you're just sitting in your desk wanting to get back to what you were doing for 5 whole minutes. But what happens is that 5 minutes resets that flow, that motivational well that I've been talking about, this kind of ethereal, vague thing that you can't really define. And then you get back into it for 25 minutes or whatever your next thing is. And it's like you started from square one, like you started from scratch with that motivation. Like you're back. It's not like you're a little bit less effective than you were the first time. No, it's like you're just as effective as you were when you started this thing. And what we found, the research shows that typically about 3 or 4 repetitions of this process, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, is about all we can do before we kind of slip out of that flow state. Doesn't mean we can't do work after that. Doesn't mean we're done for the day, or that now we've exhausted ourselves and we just crash until tomorrow. It just means if you're going to take advantage of this flow state and you really want to throw fuel on that fire, for lack of a better analogy, using this technique about 4 times becomes one cycle, one Pomodoro as we call it, and it really works. So Paul, yeah, he's got some links here to the Wikipedia article is a great place to start. If you've never heard of this, it's pretty cool. It's fascinating because it really does. I mean, I read a book about it a long time ago, so I'm probably forgetting some of the details, but he kind of like the guy, Francisco Cerello, yeah, it's an Italian guy, just sort of came up with it. He was like, I'm just going to use this and blah, 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 and kind of made it up. I don't know that he had like a background in psychology or productivity or anything like that. Maybe he did. But what we found is like, hey, the research actually proves that to be true. Like there's a lot of, science here. There's a lot of psychology here of like, take advantage of the best work mode by forcing yourself to take a short little break in the middle of whatever you're doing. Counterintuitive to how we humans operate, right? We're like, no, if I'm in the flow state, I want to take advantage of that state. I'm going to work for 2 hours straight. Boom. And you can do that because the flow state allows you to do that. Oh, sound's getting crackly. All right. Sorry, folks. We'll see. Hold on. 1 second. We'll see if this is going to work. It's probably not going to work. Can you hear me now? Maybe. It looks like it might be working. I know there's a few seconds delay there, so let me know if I'm seeing things. I'm seeing this thing move, so hopefully it's working, but I'll take a little second. Yeah, hey, cool, okay. Sorry, everyone. That's why I wanted to use the Mac Mini. I don't know what's going on with the power module is failing on this one. I'm quiet. Okay, I can turn that up. Hold on. Maybe not. I don't think I do. Nope. You're just gonna have to turn me up. Maybe let's put this up at 5. Is that a little bit better? A little bit more loud? We'll see. All right. If not, we'll just go with it. We can fix it in post. All right. That was a good segue for the rest of this, which is moving into what I'd love to talk about, because it relates to everything we do, and that is this idea of our own mindset and isolation. So two different subjects, but both relatively unrelated to motivation, so it's not something that we often dig into. The first part is the second thing I mentioned, which is the isolation. Yeah, Matt says, great demonstration of life interrupting flow state. Geez, tell me about it, dude. This is my whole day. Everything, like, oh, computer blew up. We often feel like, motivation is this thing that we alone can do. And for good reason, right? Because we're talking about ourselves. We're talking about how we feel motivated. I wake up and do this. I have a certain flow state that is different than yours. It's different than Robin's, and it's different than Matt's. And so it often feels like we are the only people who have any input into our own motivation. And I want to remind you that nothing you do as a writer has to be alone and in isolation. This is important to me. Obviously, it's heavy on my heart because I have crippling anxiety, and I discovered that by being isolated in my room, just literally trying to bang out the words, I would have panic attacks. But everybody I would talk to about this maybe didn't have panic attacks, but every single person realized, like, oh, there's some amount of social interaction that I need that I don't often allow myself to have, or I talk myself out of needing, right? Is this making sense? Hopefully this is ringing some bells here. But when it comes to our own motivation, you have other people around you who can help you be motivated. I know that sounds so simple and so counterintuitive, or not counterintuitive, so obvious. And you're like, yeah, I've heard this before, but like, there is a reason we humans are these social animals, and trying to stay motivated on our own with no input, with no external forces helping us or even pushing us is not necessarily a recipe for disaster. I mean, for me it was, but for you, it just is, again, it's another way of you taking advantage of what already exists. So let's get more specific about that, because it's super important to talk about. I found that by setting up one lunch a week with some friend of mine, somebody I used to work with at the church, or somebody who used to go to the church, but an acquaintance, it didn't matter. My wife, whoever it was, by setting up one lunch with them per week, I found myself motivated every morning, more so than I was without it. Okay, it's as simple as that. Now, I'm not saying that lunch is the thing for you. I'm not saying that it has to be church. It doesn't. But the point is, there needs to be something that you use that's not in your own brain, that's not in your own body, that's not in your own computer, in human form. There needs to be some external thing, a person, I should say, not thing. You're not things, people. You're people. There's somebody out there who can help you be more motivated. And I don't know what that looks like. Again, I'm not going to prescribe that to you. But for me, it was, I just needed to have people I knew who were in it with me, and I would go to lunch with them once a week. Maybe that sounds like a lot. Maybe it's coffee. Maybe it's coffee once every other week. The reason it was every week for me was it was something I could look forward to. So that week, I was like, I'm going to push toward Thursday, where I get to go to lunch with Corey or whoever it is. If it's every 2 weeks, and it's like, oh my gosh, on Monday I just had lunch on Friday with somebody, and on Monday I have 2 more weeks of this hell before I can, go. It's hard for me to stay motivated in that, me personally. So consider this. When you're thinking about motivation, you're thinking about that finite well of a resource that you have every morning. That's a gift that you have, and you can take advantage of that gift. Think of it like a gift of money. You can go spend that or you can invest that. And by using other people around you and having social support and accountability, even if you want to do it that way, is so powerful for our motivation. It's a force multiplier. Now, this doesn't have to be a very specific, purposeful thing like I did. I mean, I literally set it up to prevent me from being anxious. But really, the thing was I was motivated to work, to do the job that I left my other job to go do because I said I wanted to be a writer, right? So I was very purposeful about like, man, I'm having panic attacks. I've got anxiety. I'm pretty sure I need other people in my life. Like I was literally in a basement that looked like a bunker. I mean, concrete walls, like unfinished walls. I was literally in a jail cell, is what it felt like every morning. And I would try to work every day. And I realized I had panic attacks because I was lonely. Now, again, you may not have that. You may not have anxiety around being lonely. But the point is, I guarantee there is something you can use in the form of another human being to motivate you. Doesn't have to be every week. Doesn't even have to be every 2 weeks. But figure out what that is. Figure out what the time frame is and the context. Again, the consistent context that you can build with somebody else. It doesn't have to be the same person every time. But I chose very purposeful. I like lunch. I got to eat anyway. I love food, obviously. And I love these people and I want to stay connected to them. But I knew that was enough. It was important. It was, fun enough, if you will, that I would use that as motivation. I would wake up and go, okay, yep, this is going to suck, but I'm going to write. But I know that Thursday I get to go out with this person and, have a beer and have lunch or whatever. You don't have to use lunch at all or, coffee, beer, whatever. It can be an event. Maybe you like going to, a local place that has live bands, live music every Friday night. So you set that on the calendar. Say every 2 weeks, I'm going to go do this thing. And that's what I'm going to look forward to doing. I like doing it during the workday. For me, it worked better to do a lunch because that was part of my work now. I can always go see a live band. I can go see live music on Friday night. We're probably going to do something with the kids. Like there's the whole personal life thing too. And I would use that to look forward to, but I didn't have a problem in my personal life being motivated to do that stuff. Does that make sense? So when we're talking about work-life balance, I put the lunch with a specific person I liked to be around. And I tried to do it every week because that would motivate me for my work week. I hope that's making sense. I also mentioned this idea of mindset. Specifically, there's a lot we can unpack, but we don't need to do that because I've talked about mindset elsewhere. That's all true here. But dealing with setbacks in this stuff. When we build habits, we have to remember that even though we're building a habit, if we fail consistently to do that thing every day, we are now building a habit in the exact opposite direction, right? We're getting used to not accomplishing that goal we set out for ourselves. And pretty soon we're habitual about that, right? Try to think of an example here. If you're saying I'm going to write every single day, and so to do that, you set your context of, well, I'm going to drive to this coffee shop I like every day, and there I'm gonna write. And then you get in the car and you drive for 30 minutes, and or maybe it's a long ways away. Whatever. Let's say it's 30 minutes away, and you get there and you get a call from your boss, and that happens every single day. What you're now doing is building a habit of driving 30 minutes to a coffee shop to have a conversation with your boss. Now I know that's a dumb example because it's probably not reality, but you can hear what I'm saying here, right? You have to be careful about how you design your consistent context for these goals that you hope will turn into habits. You're using motivation and it's finite. And so if you use it for the wrong thing, or you fail in that one small little goal one time or 2 times or 3 times, you have to sort of reset. And that's how I deal with the setback. That's how I would deal with that. I'd say, okay, look, this didn't work. Am I still on track to set this as a goal, to get this to become a goal for me? Or do I need to kind of rejigger the plan a little bit and figure out how to do this better? I hope that makes sense. We need to view these setbacks, though, as part of the learning process. Like, they are going to happen. So we can't wake up tomorrow and use this motivation and all the stuff Nick talked about and say, oh, I'm be so super motivated. And he said to go to a brewery and drink a beer at 11 a.m. every single day. That's not going to work for you because you're different. You're not me. And you know that, but it's worth reiterating. It's like when I teach dictation, every author I've ever talked to about it, they're like, yeah, I tried it and it didn't work. Every single one of you guys, you're like, yeah, I tried it, it didn't work. And I'm like, I know, that's the whole point. This is a process. It's a learning process. And trust me, I went to music school. I know what it means to practice. Most people don't, by the way. Like that's a whole skill set that most people don't even have. But I know what it's like to practice something. I mean, it sucks for a long time until it doesn't suck. We used to say, the old quote was, an amateur musician plays it until they get it right. A professional musician practices it, plays it until they can't get it wrong. So just that's how I approach practice, right? You're going to do something over and over and over again. And yes, you're allowed to tweak your system and tweak your process, but you cannot stop before you can't do the thing wrong, before the habit is built. And so that comes into dictation. When you're learning dictation, you see me do it. So you know that it works. Don't lie to yourself. It's not that, oh, it doesn't work for me. No, it's just you haven't figured out the process for you. I'm an example, so you clearly know that it can work, that it does work for authors. And it can work for every single author. It's just going to look a little bit different. So you have to be willing to put the time in to develop the skill of practicing and iterate your process until it is working a little bit better, gets a little bit easier. And then pretty soon you will be in the habit of dictation. Guys, this stuff is no different. Using your motivation is no different. You wake up tomorrow and you might be frustrated because you're like, damn it, I don't have the motivation. All I want to do is do the dishes. I don't understand what Nick was talking about. It's frustrating. Slow down, take a step back, go take your friend out to lunch, whatever the thing is, find that motivation. Set the Pomodoro timer anyway. Just try to get into that flow state. If it doesn't work, don't beat yourself up. Just try again the next day. Change and iterate that process a little bit. Figure out what to tweak, what variable, what lever to pull. There's a million of them. There's an unlimited amount of variables we can use to throw at this. I've just given you like 5 of them, right? But there's so many more things you can do that you probably already know about. You've been doing this a long time, or you're a big boy or girl, you're a grown up. You know how to. You've been motivated in the past, so you remember what that's like. So for whatever it is, figure out for yourself what that looks like, and then try to build a system around it, because it's only with that system of practicing how we're going to use our motivation can we actually take advantage of it. I believe that. I don't think that anybody has been successful wholly on accident. I mean, even the moonshot books that just go all the way and they blow up and, oh, I don't know how it happened. I'm just such a good writer. They still have shown, if you dig into it, I mean, yeah, sure, maybe they don't know what they're doing when it comes to like how to put words together, and they just got lucky. But they wrote the book. Like, they had to have enough motivation to get that thing done in the first place, right? So even people like that are not failing or accidentally falling their way into being motivated enough to build habits and discipline out of all this stuff. A little rambly, I know, but I hope that is encouraging for you. The last tip I want to give you, again, is probably reiterative, and you've heard it 1,000 times. It's visualize that success. It's like literally see what you want that day to look like. You listen to me talk, you already know, generally speaking, what that well of motivation feels like for you. I mean, we can't really quantify it, which is why it's weird and non-scientific, but let's say it's 100 units of motivation. That's what you have every morning. You wake up with 100 units of motivation. Again, maybe your number's 50, 150, whatever, but we're not comparing. It doesn't matter. Call it 100. You've got 100%, 100 units of motivation every morning. What does success look like? How are you going to spend those motivational units tomorrow? You wake up and what? We don't need to drastically change your routine right away, but what do you do first? When do you feel most motivated? And here's a good one. When do you feel most motivated, but life prevents you from getting into flow state? So if I wake up and do a journal, I read, I check some emails, after a little bit, I drink my coffee, I take care of business, and I take a shower, all that stuff, work out, and then the girls are getting ready to go to school, that's when I'm most motivated, but I don't get to take advantage of it because I have to to get backpacks and make sure lunch is good. And so I sort of lose some of that possible flow state. So to visualize what it would look like would be to say, okay, I think I could be equally motivated after the girls go to school. Very simple. So let me test that. Maybe I just need to not be frustrated about, oh, now I have to get the girls ready for school. Maybe I'm happy about that. I make a game out of it, and then it only takes 15 minutes to really get them in the car and then say goodbye. I'm not dropping them off myself. So then I can go down and work and be motivated. So it's a matter of visualizing this, thinking through it, using those 100 units of motivation in the best way possible, not wasting them on, well, I'm using 15 units of motivation to help the kids get in the car because I've convinced myself that's when I'm most motivated, or I'm most ready to get into flow state, whatever. I think you get what I'm saying, but that visualization process is really, really helpful, because without it, we're just sort of guessing. It's the spaghetti on the wall approach. And yeah, you might get lucky and you might find, yeah, I'm using my motivation pretty well, but chances are you're going to waste a lot of days and a lot of motivation getting there if you haven't gone through and visualized the success, which that ties into the first thing we talked about, which is setting the goal. So the night before, so today, for tomorrow, you're going to sit down and, well, what am I going to do tomorrow? I'm going to visualize how to use that motivation and win the day, as we say. All right, so coming up on the hour. I know that was a little shorter because we had a nice little interruption in the middle, but I tried to ramble fast at the end. Thanks for dropping in. I think it was Paul. Thanks for dropping in the links. Go check that out if you haven't heard of Pomodoro, or even if you have, but maybe it's like one of many productivity tools. Yes, it is, and there are other ones that would be helpful, but that's the one I have found that it just sort of works because it doesn't really get in the way. We don't have to use another tool. I mean, they do have apps for the little timer and all that, which I have one called Pomodoro Timer on my computer, but it doesn't force you to like, okay, go buy a whiteboard, go to Walmart right now and get all these markers. It doesn't force anything onto you as far as in terms of productivity or having to do anything different. It's literally just taking the time that you're already spending writing and restructuring it to have a break in the middle. So it's very non-invasive, but the science checks out. It really works. So go check that out. If you got any questions here, there are a few minutes. Feel free to drop something in. If I wasn't clear about something, it's because there's a lot going on. I'm trying to make sure my computer doesn't explode, changing microphones. So I apologize. It was a little disjointed today, but I really hope that this serves you. I hope that this helps you find that motivational well and reminds you that you can take advantage of that. You're able to use that to your advantage. That's what it's there for. I don't know why we evolved that as humans, but why we were gifted that by our creator or whatever, but it's there. It's there for us to use. Yeah, let me know. Let's see, any questions there? Appreciate y'all being here. Thanks, Joan. Appreciate you. People signing off quickly, millions at a time, every minute. What else? What's going on? Oh yeah, Author Ascend. We'll jump back on it. I haven't been lazy on that. I've just been really, really slammed. Personal life stuff, obviously puppy and just things going on. We had some emergency ski trips to go on. Happens. We're going to jump back on that too. Probably will be March, but I've got some trips coming up. So we'll see if we can do that in between. Otherwise, we will see you not next week, potentially the week after. Thanks for being here, and let me know. I'll check comments and stuff throughout the day as well, but I will sign off now so I can unplug my computer and throw it against the wall. I hope you are all having a great